time to wake up. It's Saturday morning. Find some milk and cereal. Grab a bowl and spoon. No, a bigger spoon. Head to the living room and take a seat on the floor while Joseph and Chris present to you Saturday Morning Cartoon!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoon Boom. This is a show where we wake up with the Saturday morning sun, plop down in the living room for the big bowl of sugary cereal, and watch all your favorite cartoons, both old and new. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Chris.
And this morning, we watched Drak Pack.
And this was suggested by Scott, a.k.a. @PatMosby on Twitter. So thank you, Scott.
Yes, thank you, Scott. Let me say, I don't know how you felt about this show, but I know how I felt about this show, and we'll get into that.
And it might be very different.
It might be, or you might agree. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So the show Drak Pack aired in 1980. It was created and produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions. It ran for one season, 16 episodes on the CBS network, and for a short synopsis, to make amends for all the havoc his uncle, Count Dracula, caused, his great-nephew leads a team of superheroes made up of his friends. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go down this rabbit hole here, who are some of the actors who played in this one?
All right, so the character of Drak, who's actually listed as Drak Jr., but they never refer to him as that. They always call him Drak. But he was voiced by Jerry Dexter. The voices of Frankie and Howler were voiced by William Calloway. The voice of Dracula, a.k.a. Big D, was voiced by Alan... I can't even talk now. Big D. Alan Oppenheimer. So there's a cartoon veteran that we've heard his name quite often.
Skeletor, man.
Yeah, Dr. Dred, voiced by Hans Conried. Toad and Fly were both voiced by Don Messick, another person that we've seen quite often in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Vampira, voiced by Julie Werter. And Mummy Man, voiced by Chuck McCann.
Yeah, that's like every character in this show, period.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything else is just a show up for one episode kind of dude.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
So, a few more...
I know how this is going to go based on your, sudden sigh. You're just,
Yeah. Well, all right. So a few tasty marshmallows out of this big bowl of Drak Pack cereal, if you even want to call them tasty. I mean, honestly, there wasn't a lot to this show trivia-wise. So here's what I got. Celebrity impersonations abound. Not only is Drak Jr. voiced in the style of Don Adams with frequent references to Get Smart, but Vampira is given Eva Gabor's Hungarian accent, while Toad is voiced in the style of Peter Lorre and bears a kind of a resemblance to him as well.
In a way,
right?
Yeah.
More green.
Yeah. He's short. I guess that's the resemblance.
Kind of short with the rounded face, I think, is what it was.
Well, sometimes rounded face. I'll get into that later.
Okay. And this one, kind of like you were mentioning, while Drak Jr. is frequently referred to as Dracula's nephew, he's technically, according to the first episode, his great-nephew, as Dracula states that he is the boy's great uncle.
Well, that would make a lot more sense because, actually, I guess I don't know. I have no follow-up to that, so never mind.
Don't worry about making sense of this show.
Yeah. We'll just call it good.
Yeah, just accept it. Howler's powerful breath is generally considered to be a reference of the Big Bad Wolf fairy tale fame, which is kind of what, we figured. They don't ever mention
obvious.
it. They don't ever mention that, but you can kind of gather it just from knowing the story altogether, or just the Three Little Pigs. So,
right.
Anyway, memories of the show, Chris? Did you know about it?
No, some part of me wants to say that I've heard the name before, but I don't think I have. I think it's just from having seen the suggestion. So then when we finally got to it, I was like, oh yeah, this thing. Then I'm like, no, I probably never actually heard of this.
Yeah.
With good reason.
You know what? I had heard of this show. I had never seen it, but I had heard of it and I had seen the cover and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And I had it in my Amazon shopping cart forever, but I never clicked the buy now option.
How did you even hear about it?
Because I always look up old monster cartoons and stuff. And
you would.
I'm constantly searching the web for such things. And this was one of those that I didn't see any reviews about it or anything, but I was like, this looks interesting. Maybe I'll check it out. And I never did. So this was an opportunity for me to do so. And I'll say I'm glad that I never purchased it.
Yeah.
Just to start us off. but let's go ahead and start us off.
Okay.
We'll jump into the 3 episodes we watched for today's show, as we usually do. The very first episode, highest rated episode, and finally, a random or listener chosen episode. Order may vary depending on how these episodes fall chronologically, but of course, we have to start with the very first episode being Color Me Dredful, Season 1, Episode 1, where Dr. Dred is feeling like a failure because the Drak Pack has defeated him so often, so he builds a color collector that steals the color from anything the ray hits. His first victims are, of course, the Drak Pack.
That actually isn't true. Because he drains the color from all kinds of other stuff first before he goes for the Drak Pack.
Does he drain colors from people, though, or just objects?
Objects.
Yeah.
Because he keeps draining the color. But what's weird is he wasn't even going to drain their color. I mean, as we see as the episode progresses, that wasn't even his plan, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, his plan was even stupider than what the description sounds like. But...
So,
man,
Dr. Dred is their main and really their only villain. He leads a team called Ogre, which is the organization for generally repulsive enterprises or something.
Something like that. I don't know if it matters.
It doesn't, but yeah, he leads Ogre, a bad acronym.
Yes,
and Ogre consists of, as you were saying in the voice actors, it's got Vampira, it's got Fly, it's got Mummy Man, and it's got Toad. That's it. That's Ogre.
I couldn't figure out if Fly was actually a monster or if he was a
man
tiny
dressed
guy.
up as a fly.
Yeah, because he had like, I don't know, it was almost like the Batman thing where like the bottom half of his mouth and jaw looked very human.
I feel like
but the rest of him was Fly.
I feel like he was kind of a experiment gone wrong, like Jeff Goldblum Fly situation.
Maybe. Well, I feel like they were kind of going for that, but honestly, to me, it looked like a short French guy wearing a Fly costume.
Man, I had so much of a problem with Fly. He was the worst. I hated that guy.
They gave him this weird French accent.
And of course, he had the buzzing every now and then.
Yeah, every once in a while he would buzz.
Of course.
Like, honestly, most of the bad guys were pretty awful. I liked Mummy Man to an extent.
Mummy Man was funny because you could not understand a word he was saying.
He just mumbled everything, and every once in a while you would catch a word. But there's no context to it because you can't understand anything else he says. So
yeah,
but that makes him entertaining, and he's huge.
He's their big brute force. He's kind of the counter to Frankie.
Right.
But Mummy Mummy Man, he has like endless amounts of like bandage wraps that he can use to tie up and keep the Drak Pack from going anywhere. And
super strength.
He does have super strength, and his mumbling is usually kind of not translated directly, but people respond to it. At least the Ogre team responds to it and kind of clues you in on what he was talking about. So I did like that. I thought that was kind of clever, the way that they played his mumbling. Because at first I thought it was just really bad audio with him and I couldn't hear what he was saying right. But then
God, this is awful.
Yeah, then I saw what they were doing. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Vampira was interesting in a way. I didn't mind her too much. I just felt like they made really poor choices with her. Like, honestly, so her thing is she can turn into different animals. Like, she's a shapeshifter, even though she's like a female vampire.
Yeah.
Instead of turning into a bat, she turns into whatever she wants.
She turns into a bat sometimes.
She more often turns into a snake, like a cobra. But like, at one point in this one, she turns into a pterodactyl. I'm like, oh, that's weird, but kind of cool. But then later, like when they're like they're like actually fighting the Drak Pack, out of all the things she can turn into, she turns into a crab.
not a crab. She turns into a lobster, Chris.
Oh, she turns into a... She turns into a lobster. Like, what? She could have been a lion or a bear or something cool. Or she could have been, the snake again. It's a freaking lobster. All they have to do is put her in a pot of boiling water.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they got to do. Put rubber bands on her hands.
Let's talk about the Drak Pack for a second. So, so you've got Drak Jr., you've got Frankie, you've got Howler. Those are their code names and their real names, I guess. Like, is Howler like James
I guess
Howlett,
that's his name.
aka Logan, aka Wolverine? Like, is that his last name or something, or is that?
I have no idea. I have no idea, man.
Yeah,
like,
the only one.
Your guess is as good as mine.
The only ones that flew with me, I guess, were Drak is fine because he's Dracula's great nephew, and Frankie's fine because that's a real name, but.
Right.
Howler didn't make sense to me. And Howler is always wearing an orange belly shirt. Like, he's always showing his belly.
Yes. Which is, it was weird. I don't remember a time where that was like in style. For guys at least.
This
Girls,
is coming right out of the 70s, and I'm not sure what the style was then, but I do not recall belly shirts on guys being cool.
Well, and this show came out in 1980, right?
Right.
Yeah, so like, I don't know about this. I don't trust it. I don't think the showing your midriff was a thing for guys, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I have nothing against it necessarily if that's your thing, but
you don't want to see me wearing a belly shirt. I can tell you that much.
But yeah, so that was his thing constantly. I guess just to show that he has a hairy belly when he's a werewolf. So okay. Their thing is, and it works on 2 levels, but not another one for me, where according to well, first of all, let's talk about the way that this intros. It intros as you already, like, they've been doing this for a while, and this is the last straw for Dr. Dred because he's been beaten so many times. But this is the official first episode, so it's like we are supposed to know what's been going on up until this point. And we kind of get fed little tidbits here and there of what exactly is happening with them. And the intro is one of those, it doesn't just play a theme song, it spells it out for us and tells us briefly what's going on up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, you guys would have heard it already, but like the intro gives us the entire story pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, they don't leave anything to the imagination. They're like, here's exactly what you need to know in the form of a song.
Yeah, but what they do is, it's weird that they say them transforming into monsters, which is what, the Drak Pack does. That's their superpowers, is to turn into monsters. Right. So Drak turning into a vampire, fine. Like, I've seen transforming vampires before.
I don't know it's a vampire so much as it's maybe a character from Rocky Horror Picture Show with the ability to turn into a bat.
He does turn into like a very androgynous vampire.
He's got eyeshadow, man. Like a lot of it too.
Eyeshadow and lipstick.
Yeah.
And white makeup.
He straight up looks like he's from Rocky Horror. And he doesn't do anything vampire-like aside from turn into a bat.
He can also turn into mist, but he doesn't do anything like... There's no mention of like blood sucking or anything like that.
No.
Even
can go out in the sunlight.
Even Dracula, Dracula can't go out in the sunlight, which we'll talk about later, but
right.
Even Dracula like doesn't talk about blood. In the first episode, he's talking about like drinking tomato juice.
Sorry, it's tomato juice.
Oh yeah, that's the way he says it, tomato juice. So they're straying really far away from anything that could be I don't know, that parents could get upset about.
Right.
There are, for a horror show, like, there are 0 like scary things. This is the tamest horror property that I think I've ever seen. Honestly, Rick Moranis in Gravedale High was scarier than this.
Oh yeah, it was better than this.
Oh, way better. Yeah.
Which is really, I'm ashamed to say.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't not like that show, but just as a comparison, this show doesn't even hold a candle to it.
No, and oh man. No, well then, so we talked about what Drak does. Explain the other 2.
Okay, yeah. So Frankie, first Howler. Howler is a guy who can turn into a werewolf at will. Doesn't have to have a full moon or anything. It's just like, that's his thing. It's like, all right, people transform into werewolves. I accept this. But the one that upsets me is Frankie turns into a Frankenstein's monster from a human. Not only does his skin turn green, but he gets bolts in his neck and everything. And it's like, why is that a transformation? Like, that's not a transformation. Like, he's either a Frankenstein's monster or he's not.
They just, every time they turn, they just kill him and bring him back to life every time.
with the spare parts of other humans. Yeah.
Yeah. They just like kill him and do that. So please explain to our listeners what they do to turn into these things.
Oh man. This was, I had to like rewind this to see if I had heard it right. Cause they first are like, all right guys, it's time for the Drak Whack. And it's like, wait, what? And then they're like,
first I thought they said Drak Quack.
oh
I
no.
was like, what?
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, the way to think of it is like when you whack something, like when you smack it. But in this case, they're high-fiving basically. And that's the Drak whack, is them giving like a triple high five and turning into, that's how they activate their monster form.
Well, and then they also say like wacko afterwards.
Oh, yeah, like
or
wacko!
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, all right, let's Drak whack. Wacko! And then you're like, what is happening?
It was
man.
weird. And I mean, we didn't really talk about the episode because what is there to talk about? Like,
There's not much. I mean, all it is he's got this machine draining color. And out of all the times they foiled Dr. Dred, they can't figure out that it's him behind it. They're like, oh, I wonder what's happening. And they, like, every episode, this is what happens. I'll give you the plot for every episode.
Yeah.
Dr. Dred will be doing something. They will have no idea what's happening until Big D, oh my God, so he has them contact him. Why he doesn't just contact them first, I don't know. But they always have to contact him. And he yells at them about what's going on. And they're like, oh, it's Dr. Dred. And then they go stop Dr. Dred. And that is every friggin' episode. And yeah, dude, there's so many euphemisms in this episode in particular. Well, I mean, Big D, come on. Come on.
But see, back in 1980, I don't know that those had the same meanings as they do now.
Maybe not. But like, what about feeling in the pink? Because that comes up later too. And I'm like, really?
It does.
Really?
I'm not, I don't think that it meant the same thing. Like,
I don't know.
I was looking at this through a lens of, this was a time where these words were not used in such a way.
You know, and one thing that I didn't understand was, so I thought, and in the description for the episode, it even says that his plan is to decolorize everything, starting with the Drak Pack. So he decolorizes things in their house, but doesn't decolorize them, which I didn't understand that.
Yeah, not right away, at least. They kind of decolorize each other at one point, trying to fix it.
They end up getting to his place, and then his plan instead is to tie them up and drown them in what basically looks like a, I don't know, like a big boiler or something where the pink pigment is draining into.
Yeah. He wants to drown them in the color pink because when the color is drained, it turns basically into a paint-like substance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like liquid pigment.
Right.
So he chooses the pink one and puts them in there and then starts to have them drown. But, okay, here's two other things that happen in every episode. For one, Toad will always screw everything up, and that's how the Drak Pack is able to, like, not die, because he always does something to mess up Dr. Dred's plan.
Yeah, Drak Pack's really not that competent of a team.
And then, the only other thing that always happens is they get out of every situation by telling Frankie that he's mad, and then he's like, oh, I guess I am mad, and then he gets more strength, and then he can break out of anything.
Yeah, Frankie's kind of like the Hulk. The more mad he gets, the stronger he gets. But
he's never actually mad. Howler has to tell him he's mad.
Yeah.
He's like, pink makes you mad. And he's like, I guess it does.
Yeah, that was actually kind of funny. I guess the highlight of this episode for me was probably Dracula, because I think his lines, Big D, his lines were the best out of everybody's.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Otherwise, it was just kind of, I don't know, like I didn't like the intro episode very much, and I just thought the plot was weak, and it didn't pick itself up. So
and I gotta tell you, like, Frankie and Howler's voices are awful. Like, they annoy the crap out of me, especially Frankie's voice. His voice is terrible.
They're the same person too.
I know, and like his laugh. What is up with his laugh? His laugh is like, and he does it all the time. He's always doing that laugh, and it drives me nuts. And it made me want to rip my own eardrums out, which I almost did, but I figured I might need them for later.
I don't know what the problem is with people animating werewolves. Like, why can't they make a cool werewolf?
No, it looked stupid.
No, not even the look, but the attitude too. Like, I liked the werewolf from, what was the show we watched that had Ghoulie get together in it?
Are you talking about Groovy Ghoulies?
Groovy Ghoulies, yeah. I liked that werewolf better than I liked this werewolf, and I didn't care for that werewolf very much.
People are not good at animated werewolves, apparently.
I don't know. They just don't give them the right attitudes to me. But
Right, exactly.
yeah, ugh.
And one other thing that bugged me is if you look at Drak in his human form in this first episode, at least, he always has his arms crossed and his head cocked to the side, like he hates everything and he's annoyed to be doing everything. He always looks angry. And I'm like, this is just it's so bad.
So, okay. Next episode?
Yep.
Next episode is Dred Goes Hollywood, Season 1, Episode 9. And I chose this one because we had previously done a Hollywood episode of the last show that we did, or no, two shows ago that we did, Alf. And I wanted to see what their Hollywood episode was like. And Alf's was better.
Which is saying something.
So in this episode, like, it opens with them going to a sneak preview of a movie. The Drak Pack going to a sneak preview of the movie. And then I thought it was kind of funny when Dr. Dred comes on and roars like the MGM lion.
That was kind of funny.
That was pretty funny. I was like, okay, this maybe the show is going to get better. And I mean, I was wrong, but I was hopeful there.
At least you're honest about it.
Yeah, but
I was wrong.
I did like the plot of this one better, where Dr. Dred's idea is he's producing movies that star the Drak Pack, his version of the Drak Pack, but they're doing like evil deeds. And because this is like the mass media for the public, like it's basically shaming them and making the public turn against them, which I thought was kind of a cool idea.
So real quick, I want to ask a question to the listeners, and I want them to think about for just a sec. So when we say that they were doing evil deeds, what do you think that would entail? I will give you a second. Okay, so you got evil deeds in your head. So you would think maybe like stealing things, maybe murdering people, kidnapping. No, they're being jerks to kids. That was their evil deeds, like knocking over somebody's like kite that they're flying, or like knocking ice cream out of a little kid's hand. These are the evil deeds.
They went to one time Drak went to a little kid's birthday party and ate his cake and then walked off.
Yeah, that was the evil deed.
I guess evil's like a strong word.
Well, my favorite part about that too, with the Drak scene in particular, was he walks up, there's this group of kids at a table and he walks over and he unfurls his cape and he just has his cape. And I'm like, is he flashing them? What is he doing?
All you see is his back and you're like, whoa.
I was like, gross. And then he walks away.
And then he doesn't move at all and his head's still in the same place, but then his cape goes down and the cake is gone. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So he was eating the cake. But you don't get that impression at all by the way he does it.
And then he tells them, after they can see he ate the cake, and he's like, I ate your whole cake. They're probably like, well, I can see that, jerk. But.
Maybe Dr. Dred's just not a great director.
And one thing that I didn't understand, because they didn't really say anything about it in the first episode we watched, but I guess that the Drak Pack is like a known group of like superheroes to the public. Because all these kids like knew who they were and they were so disappointed and how the Drak Pack were being so mean to them. And they're like, oh, you guys are not nice. And the other, so I guess they're kind of celebrities. The other weird thing is that like the Drak Pack goes to the movies and they're seeing this in a movie theater. And I'm like, for one, did they just go to a random movie not knowing what it was? Like, because they just kind of showed up and they looked so surprised. I'm like, how did you not know what movie you were going to? And then two, like neither of them like believed that it wasn't them on the screen, because it would show Drak first and like one would be like, oh, Drak, how could you? And he's like, that's not me. And then they would show Frankie do something. And they're like, Frankie, you're so terrible. And he's like, that's not me. And I'm like, God, you guys are so dumb.
The comedy of it, I guess, is that the Drak Pack is just not really fit to be superheroes. But I don't know if that's what it was supposed to. I don't know if that's how we're supposed to perceive it. I think they were just like poorly written heroes.
Yeah, I think so. Oh man, yeah, yep. We get introduced to something that happens in this episode and the next episode, is that random objects are apparently
telephones,
not what we think they are. Yeah, like they go outside and they get a call on a fire hydrant. Like just right outside the movie theater. Oh, the fire hydrant's ringing. They just answer it. I'm like, what? Why is this random fire hydrant a phone?
They don't even question it either.
Yeah, they don't question it at all. It's just like, it's a thing. I don't understand, man. I don't know what this is. What is life?
Yeah. Oh, something that I don't know if it had started yet, but every episode, at least from the second one forward, Dr. Dred sets up quote unquote secret meetings with only Drak. He only invites Drak Jr. to it. And his secret meetings entail him telling Drak his whole plan.
Yeah.
And basically challenging him to stop him.
Right. He wonders why he keeps losing.
Right. I did not understand the purpose of these secret meetings except as a narrative for the plot.
Well, even in the first episode, even though they didn't do the secret meeting, he had Toad deliver a message basically saying, hey, this is my plot.
Yeah.
And just left it on their window and they find it. So I'm like, he keeps telling them what he's doing. I'm like, I don't understand the thought process with the writing in this. I don't.
Instead of being a clever villain who leads like a calling card or something, he literally calls them and like tells them what he's going to do. Right. And it's not like it's anonymous because he's the only villain. So it's of course going to be him.
I do like how Dr. Dred always lures them places. Somehow it always works. He always lures them somewhere. And he lured them to like this movie set he made. And there's this like roller coaster looking, I don't know, like mine cart shaft thing that they're on, doing like a studio tour kind of thing. And it's called the Collapsing Bridge. So they're doing a studio tour. Toad is I don't know why this is even happening. Why are they doing a studio tour there? Yeah. Why do they not realize that Toad is the one giving them the tour?
Yeah.
Then jumps off the thing as it goes over what he refers to as the famous collapsing bridge. And one of them's just like, oh, I'm sure it's totally safe.
And then
like it's called the Collapsing Bridge.
And then Toad's like, all right, well, I'm going to get off here. So have fun. Yep. And they suspect nothing.
Yep. God. And
then of course they start Drak whacking and they come to stop Dred from what he's doing, killing. Oh yeah, because his plan at this point is, and he succeeded to an extent, to go and nab Dracula's coffin during the daytime, bring him out into the sunlight, and then set an alarm on top of his coffin, but change the alarm to go off while it's still daytime. Yeah, so that he can wake up to it.
So instead of just bringing him into the daylight and opening the coffin, he sets an alarm.
Right.
Because he wants Dracula to wake up unsuspectingly and fry himself. And I'm just like,
Dred is just, his schemes are just so poorly thought out. And so they just leave so many openings for, I'm going to be stopped. Like, I know I'm not going to get away with this. Maybe Dr. Dred is some kind of tragic character who wants to be stopped because he can't help what he's doing at this point.
It's all a cry for help.
Exactly.
Like, please just kill me.
He just needs he just needs the attention.
So I don't have to be in this show anymore. My favorite quote from this episode and the entire show is, "It's high noon for Big D." That is a quote to remember for the ages. It's high noon for Big D.
It's high noon for Big D. Since Toad messes up so much, he has this thing that he says, he's like, bad Toad, where he gets onto himself because he knows he's messed up. This episode also, Vampira transforms into a snake. Here's where I started hating Fly the most in this episode.
Okay.
Because...
Do explain.
Okay, so Fly is facing off with Frankenstein, and I'm like, okay, now it's time to see what this Fly guy's got. We've cut back to their fight, and Fly has literally just stuck fly paper all over Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
And like, he's inconvenienced him, and that's it. Like, there is no threat. Frankenstein has super strength. Like, fly paper would literally do nothing to him. And
well, what's funny too is like it did incapacitate him.
Yeah,
because Frankie wouldn't move.
He was like stuck in the fly paper, which was kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like, God, this is a terrible villain.
And I want you guys to realize, like, we're not talking about like he wrapped him up in some kind of giant roll of fly paper. It was like little, like 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper that he's just sticking to his back.
It was like sticky notes all over him of fly paper. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. So that made me really dislike Fly. Then they get trapped in some kind of glass that's unbreakable by This went to show just how useless Howler was, because it's unbreakable by his howl, like you would think glass would, as with a high-pitched squeal would break it. And it breaks all the glass around the tube they're caught in. But then they have to do the thing like you were talking about where they have to make Frankie believe that he's mad. And then he ends up breaking out of the glass, which I thought was not going to work at first, too, because I was like, okay, so they're going to play this differently where not even that will work. But then it's like, oh, that still works. So that's what works every time. All they have to do to win is just make Frankie mad.
Which is what they do for every episode.
Yeah.
That's how they get out of every predicament.
Yep. And they get away in time to push Dracula, to push Big D's coffin casket into a mine.
It's hard not to laugh.
So there's no sunlight. The alarm goes off. He gets up, stretches, and he's like, "Where am I?" And then he's not in the sun, so the day is saved.
Oh, one thing to mention too is that the Drak Pack get around in this car that's really weird shaped and has these large red bat wings hanging off the side.
Oh, yeah.
So not inconspicuous at all. And they will, they would have to, if they're on a 2-lane road, they would have to drive down the middle of both lanes and no one would be able to pass them. They couldn't pass anybody because they would wreck the car because the wings would snap off. It's a very poor designed car.
I think it was called the Drakster. Everything is named
called the Drakster.
After Drak. And it's like it can go air, water, or land. Oh, an example of why Drak is like the guy from Get Smart is because he has this thing. He's almost very Inspector Gadget-like, where he's like, this reminds me of such and such case, or I think this is the clue. And like he's never like intelligent about it. But
no, never.
And a lot of times he points out something that's very obvious, or that the other two have already said, but he claims it as his own. So he's just very narcissistic and not all that smart.
Yeah, he's pretty much an idiot.
Yeah.
Like we can go ahead and say he's stupid.
Yeah. So the last episode we watched for today's show was the Grimmest Book of Records, season 1, episode 14, and I think Chris chose this one.
I did. Okay, so there were no rated episodes of this show anywhere. So in place of a highest rated, we both chose a random episode, and I chose this one because I'm like, Grimmest book, cool, kind of thinking maybe one thing about it, and it wasn't what I was thinking, because anytime I see the words like grim and book, I think of something like Grimm's Fairy Tales or something, and I'm like, okay, cool, Brothers Grimm, that might be interesting in this kind of cartoon with like monsters and stuff. That's not what we got. Not what we got at all. Instead, this was like Grimmest Book of World Records is what this was. So Dr. Dred's plan was, I want to get in the Grimmest Book of World Records by committing the most crimes in a day, which apparently is only 3. So
well,
it doesn't seem too hard.
Well, no, it's not only 3. It's the most major international crimes in a 3-hour period.
Oh, okay, yeah. There we go.
So he just has to commit as many as he can in 3 hours internationally.
Right, which is only 3.
Yeah, it starts off with one of the secret meetings on an island where Drak has to go alone. And then...
please tell him what happens after the meeting.
Dr. Dred he's in like a shark mobile thing, or shark submarine, I guess.
Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, and then it eats Drak Jr.'s boat, and he's like, all right, bye, and then leaves him there after telling him. And then Drak Jr., just like the inexplicable telephones inside of fire hydrants, this island also happens to be a flying island that turns into a ship, and he's just like, okay, well, I'll just fly away. And so he does.
He pulls open the palm tree, presses like a lever, and the palms rotate like a helicopter, and he just flies away.
Yeah. It's like he knew all along that's exactly what was going to happen. But
yeah, like what the... And then, so like, again, Big D sends a bat to them to tell them to call him instead of just calling him himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have just called them and saved everybody the trouble, but no. So then they do some more Drak Pack whack. They start whacking so they can go stop Dr. Dred, who's like, this gets weird. This gets really weird. So his very first caper is very Carmen Sandiego-like in that he steals the clock face of Big Ben.
Right.
Like, okay, that is a pretty goofy evil supervillain plot. All right, still Big Ben. That makes sense. But then he's like, this next one, it's like this next one's gonna be really get the media's attention, which is that he steals a horse, a racehorse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Triple
what?
Crown. He steals the Triple Crown winner, Lightning Lady.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a bigger theft than Big Ben was just stealing this horse. And I'm like, is it really?
Yeah. He's captured Frankie at this point because how did Frankie get captured? Do you remember?
I don't know. It was something stupid.
Yeah. So
that's all you need to know.
Yeah, so Frankie's captured. Okay, so Drak Jr. is locked up in a tower. Fly throws a net on top of Frankie, and that's how he's captured.
Oh,
and
perfect.
and so they take Frankie to the next crime with Lightning Lady, and then they replace Lightning Lady, the horse, under the jockey with Frankie, and make Frankie finish the race as the horse.
So he's just running on all fours.
But he finishes, and he gets first place, I think.
Yeah, I think he does too. Which is, oh man, like when I thought this show couldn't get dumber.
And this is one of the last episodes too, because there's 16. This is 14.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't improving.
And then the next big one was to steal the oil tanker out in the ocean.
Yeah, but first, Drak Jr. and Howler are trapped in things that would not allow them to break out of. Like Howler is trapped in some kind of laser, just
it's
bars.
Yeah, it's just lasers kind of making almost like a little cage around him.
And Drak Jr. is trapped in a giant jar with a cork plug on it so that he can't turn into mist and get out of it.
Right.
So I'm assuming it's cutting all his air off too. So, but I don't know if vampires have to breathe. I don't know.
Yeah, he didn't seem like he was getting, lightheaded or anything. He was just annoyed that he's in a jar.
Yeah. And
as
so
one would be.
Howler does the obvious thing, which is blow a computer chair into the computer.
Yeah.
And push just the right button to release him so that he can release Drak Jr. after that.
Yes.
So obvious.
I mean, that's exactly what I would do.
Well, it's exactly what I've suspected would have happened with all everything at their disposal. Computer chair saved the day.
You're right. And it's good that he had enough working knowledge of that system to know which button that chair needed to smack into.
And even better that it wasn't password protected, knowing that they were in there with the only way to let themselves out.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like Dr. Dred
foresight.
has to be some kind of tragic figure who wants to be caught. He needs this.
Yeah, he needs to be caught. For sure. Please stop me. Please.
Please take me in.
I'm ruining my family.
Yeah. So he struck again and he succeeds at stealing this tanker. And all he has to do to claim his place in the Grimmest book of records, which is all he wants. He doesn't want to take over the world or anything at this point. He just wants to be in that book of records. And that's such a big deal to Big D and everybody that he has to be stopped at all costs. Like this is his biggest heist yet. This is the most evil thing he's ever done. Even more evil than stealing candy from babies.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and
it's pretty evil.
It does this thing that I kind of like, this circular thing where Drak Jr. is like, Dred would go bananas if he knew we were following, and then Dred's like, they'd go bananas if they knew that I knew that they were following me, and then it goes back to Drak Jr., who's like, basically like, I knew he knew I knew, and it just it goes like that a few times.
Yeah, that was all right.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the funniest part of this episode, and that's not even that funny. I'm just grabbing at straws here.
It's really not that funny, but it was all right. It was an okay joke.
It was an okay joke. It was acceptable.
It was all right. Yeah, it wasn't the worst.
No, yeah.
Give him that.
That's the most you can give it at this point. Yeah, and so they're about to broadcast to the world. Drak Pack intervenes, of course. Fly is terrible still. He does pretty much nothing.
Well, it's terrible. Yeah. Drak Pack wins.
Mummy Man is the one who really kind of messes it up because he's trying to capture the Drak Pack with his bandages without looking because they go over or they go like over this wall and he tries to grab them and they put a rock inside of his bandages or a giant boulder. He grabs it up and it comes back down so hard that it like smashes into the island that they're on and sinks it. And that's it.
Yeah. So then Drak Pack sail away on the oil tanker with Big Ben and the horse.
Yep.
And yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's that glorious episode.
That was Drak Pack. So, well, Chris, it looks like it's about time we set up a secret meeting with our team of little monsters, our inner kids, and see what they thought of the Drak Pack.
Some of the characters in this cartoon were kind of cool, but most of them were really annoying, and I wish they would just shut up. I mean, I like monsters and all, but you can't make monsters good guys. And stupid. I think this cartoon was making me even madder than Frankie. So before I start breaking things, I'm gonna give this one bowl of big D's out of 5, and now I'm going to go make Vampira my girlfriend so she can turn into a snake and eat my math teacher. Bye.
As appealing as a horror-themed subject matter is to me, the only thing that scared me was how unappealing Drak Pack ended up being. Every episode seemed like a rehash of the one before it, and it seemed to lack a great deal of polish. I honestly don't think I've ever seen a band of less threatening villains. Fly, I'm calling you out specifically. Drak Pack continuously straddled the line between taking itself seriously and being a comical parody of the cartoon crime-fighting genre, but because I'm not even sure it knew what it wanted to be, it wasn't successful at either. Overall, I can only give Drak Pack 2 big bowls of Big D's tomato juice out of 5, and Dracula's humor was easily the highlight, but the rest of the show was just Drak Whack.
I'm glad this isn't the type of horror I grew up with.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
so.
even we haven't watched this yet, but like the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown was probably more frightening than this cartoon was.
It probably was. There's an episode of Eureka's Castle that I saw as a kid that was scarier than this. Yeah,
I believe it. Fraggle Rock.
Yeah,
just in general, Fraggles are frightening.
Oh yeah, much scarier. So do you have anything else to add before we go?
I was so disappointed because I wanted to like this show. Of course, I have a bias towards monster things, and this let me down in so many ways. I was just like it's not even like I see where they were going with it. It's like, I don't understand why they made a lot of the choices that they made. And I think if they had made more of a cohesive storyline, it could have actually gone somewhere. But instead, it was just random ideas thrown all over the place. There had to be like a ton of writers on this who just like did not communicate well and just threw ideas together in a way that just didn't work for me. So I can't recommend watching this. I mean, you might do it now just to see if I'm wrong and prove me wrong, but I promise I'm not. And just listen to me for once. Just listen.
Yeah, I didn't really have any idea of what to expect, but now that I've seen it, like, I know exactly why it lasted only one season. Like you said, there was some potential. Like, and the idea of it had potential, but it was so bad. The writing was terrible. It was just so silly, and it didn't make any sense. And, like, there were so many things that happened in every episode that you could predict how every episode is going to end. Like, each major plot point, you can predict it so easily. So it's like, you see one episode, you've seen all of it, so you don't need to experience it any more than that. So
yeah,
as the younger me said, I love monsters, but this cartoon did not do it. It was a complete failure.
I think maybe if you just watched one episode of this, you would get an idea of whether or not you were going to like it. And then just, even if you like it, leave it at that, because you'll stop liking it after you see the same episode 16 times.
Right.
Just so maybe it's a very, very, very small doses. I'll tell you, 3 was too big of a dose, 3 episodes.
Yes. So, yeah, that was way too much.
Yeah, leave it at 1 and maybe you won't be disappointed.
But thank you anyway, Scott, for suggesting this, because, I mean, we wouldn't have known, and we wouldn't have had, like, other cartoons we can compare this to in the future if we hadn't seen this.
Right.
So,
and I might have purchased this on Amazon eventually had it not been for this.
You saved Joseph's money.
You saved me money, so I appreciate
suggesting this.
So thank you, Scott.
So much. Yes.
Well, listeners, it looks like our milk supply is now run dry, so it's time for us to say goodbye. And next week, we'll be watching
Rick and Morty, suggested via email by Sam.
Oh my gosh. I have seen all of it, but you're going to love it, man.
Yeah, I've only seen I've seen one clip of Rick and Morty, and that is my extent.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for you to watch this.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. All right. So once again, I'm Joseph.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you next Saturday.
Presented by Nerdsloth,
a place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows.
Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.